But projections, I have slides, I think. 2 of them, that's it. All right, so what I have here is vanilla or chart website with just a few modules. So I will show you what I added so that you know what's going on here at all times. The only additional modules that I enabled from the default install are import-export, are Markdown because I like it, Taxonomies, another awesome module that I'm going to use in the presentation. If you are not using taxonomies today, you need to change that. I'm also using Noisette Commerce because the data that I'm going to use is the data from my business website. And I'm also using the Noisette Gallery, which I'm using on the same data set. So it's there, but it's not very important. First thing I'm going to do to this vanilla website is to import some data for it. So it should be, in principle, in my data folder. So this is, I'll show you what's inside of the file. It's an import file, you know, not super interesting, but I guess I'll just drop it into Visual Studio here. It defines some taxonomies, it defines my product types, and then I have the actual data. So, you know, regular import file, nothing magical going on there. So let me import that. Okay, now I should have products. Yeah, I also added the media ahead of time. But my products are here, and my products have taxonomies, so I'll be able to do some interesting queries over there. So what's the goal of projections? The goal of projections is to create queries against your content and present the results of those queries on the front end. What I'm going to do, everything I'm going to do during this demo is without touching any template file. So I'm going to use the theme machine as the theme, and I'm not going to modify it at all. I will, when relevant, I will mention that something that I'm doing can be done using a template, sometimes more efficiently. But here, the goal is to show how far you can go with projections and just projections. Just to show you the potential, but it's not necessarily what you would do on a real website. And actually, it's not what I'm doing on my own website. What I'm doing on my own website is that I'm overriding templates, but I do have a few projections going on. So there are 2 parts in projections. You have the queries themselves, and then you have the content items using those queries. So the queries are abstract descriptions of what you want to query, what are your filters, how you sort, and also some description about how it's going to be displayed. But then you have content items such as projection pages and projection widgets that are going to take the results from those queries and insert them into the front end. Okay, so one thing I'm sure you're doing all the time on your new Orchard website is, I thought it was important to really start from scratch here. So I'm switching to the disabled layer here, and I'm just moving those 3 widgets into the disabled layer so that they go out of the way. You can also delete them, but yeah, and they're gone. Okay, I'm going to do a new query. So add new query. That query I'm going to call sections. For the moment, I will only have one section in the site, which is home. So the way the content is managed on my website, I'll show you the production website so that you have a better idea of that. If you were at the commerce well, if you were awake during the commerce session, I explained how this homepage is built from all the content items that are tagged with the home taxonomy term. So I'm going to edit this query and add a filter on the content type. So you have lots of filters here. Lots of different ways you can filter out contents. The most useful is this one. So this one is going to filter the contents based on the content type. So you can select any number of content types, and the results are going to be filtered by that. So what I want here is the category term, and that's what I want for the moment. So this is going to be a very simple query. I can preview the results, and all it's returning is the only term I have in this taxonomy, which is home. Okay, so very, very simple query. I am going to use that query in my navigation. For the moment, in my navigation menu, I have the one home menu item that came with the default install. So I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to replace it with a query link. I know that my query is only returning one element, but that's a start. So the first thing that you choose in a query link is what query you want. And then you can specify a fixed number of items to display. I'm just going to leave 0 here because I want them all. So that's my query link. I should have specified text here so that I can recognize it here. And on my site, this is actually a dynamic menu item. So it queried the content database for taxonomy terms of type category, of the taxonomy category. And it gave me the one term that I have in there, and it created a menu item with it. Great. So that is not very interesting yet. So we'll go crescendo here and go into more and more complex things. The next query I'm going to do is going to be called products this time. But it's not going to query over my product content type. It's going to query again over a taxonomy. Let me open this in a different window. My products here, each of them are tagged with 3 taxonomies. You've seen one, which is the one that has the home category. I could have, a promotion category to place promoted items in. I have a product type, which is the one that I'm going to query on right now. And I have labels. So each product is of one type. So here, again, I'm going to query over content type, product type term, which is that taxonomy that I just showed you. So when I preview that, I can see the contents of that taxonomy, the terms that I use as product categories. And again, I'm going to use that in navigation. So I can go back to navigation. I will add one custom link here that I'm going to use as a container. I'm going to put products in there. I'm not going to specify a URL. This is just a container. And under that guy, I'm going to create a new query link. And this time, I'm querying on a product. I should have called that product types. I'll change it later. Again, I'm forgetting the text here. Let's call it product categories. And I'm going to take that guy and put it under products. Hit save. And now on my front end, I have still my home term, and I also have a submenu with my product categories. And I can already use that, navigate to that, because it's the taxonomy term. I already have a list of my contents here with huge images. We'll deal with that later. So let's modify that query. I misnamed it. I should have named it product categories. Is there a way I can? Oh, no, it was in the previous page. Here I need to hit properties to edit that. There you go. That should still work. Yeah. So I'll create a new one, and this one is going to be the real product query. And this time, I'm still going to filter. I'm still going to filter on content types. And this time, I'm going to filter on products. So if I preview that, I can see my list of products, again, with huge images. So when you add a filter, you see this list here. Of course, this list can be customized. You can create your own filters. I'm not going to show how you create your own filter. I'm going to show one example of extension of projections. But you have all those that exist. As always, they are your best code samples, the best code samples that you can find. You have a variation here of different ways you can filter out contents. Okay, and let's see. So here, that link here that I created as a static link, now I'm going to change it, and I'm going instead to use a content menu item link. So I'm again going to call this products, and here I'm going to, oh, forgot something. Before I do that, I need to create something to point to. That was the idea. So here I'm going to create my first projection page. And this is going to be a list of all the products in my site. So it's going to be under that. And it's going to query my products query here. And I want to display 5 items per page, and I want to show a pager. So now if I navigate to products here, I should be able to see it. There you go. That's my list of products. So now that I have a list of products that I can point to, I can, in my new content menu item thing, I can, that's because my images are so huge. Okay, so I want that content item here. I want the menu item to point to that. So I select that, save. And so I'm going to move that guy under this new one, and I'm going to delete the old one. Oops. Yeah, I should have saved before. Now we have the same thing. We still have our menu that works, but now we can click on the main one and go to the full list of products. And on the bottom of the list of products, I have pagination that enables me to go to other products. All right. So when you're inside a query, I've shown filters. You can also add criteria. And sorting criteria are also extensible things that you can create yourself. Here I'm going to choose the creation date. And you know, every time you see one of those forms here that enable you to set up the parameters of what you're creating, this is generated by the orchard.forms module. And we'll see an example of that when I create my own extension later. So here I'm just going to sort by descending creation date, which is a common thing to do on a web page. And my product should have changed to reflect that. So you get the most recent products on top. So that's filtering and sorting. And now I'm going to look at layout, and I'm going to spend a lot of time inside of layout. If you don't do anything, your products are being rendered in a URLI list of items, which is pretty much what you would get from the HTML list layout if you leave it with the defaults. So if I save that, now I have a custom layout, and if I want my projection page to use it, I actually have to go into the editor, and here it was using the default layout. I'm going to choose that new layout that I just created, save, and now it's unchanged. It's exactly the same. But I can go back to the query and edit that layout, and I can do lots of fun stuff, fun things with it. In particular, I can completely change the rendering of it. And in order to have the maximum flexibility, you need to switch to the property mode. And inside of the property mode, once you've saved it, you can add new properties, and you get a choice of the different properties that are available to be rendered in the output. Again, this is extensible. It's extensible to a degree. Let me go back to the main query page. Here you have a second tab here that you may have noticed that is called bindings. And inside of bindings, you can see the list of all the records that are the record properties that are not yet exposed. Well, some of them are already exposed. Well, all of those are already exposed. But if you had additional records in your system that you wanted to get in there, you could add a new. Oh no, those are existing bindings. Sorry, I'm completely confused here. Those were the new bindings that you can already use, and if you want to add a new one, you click Add New Binding, and here you can see for each of the records that you have in the system. In particular, let's see, my product part record. I can, for example, add the price as one of the available properties to use. Okay, and now I have the price that is exposed here. And if I go back to my query, edit products, edit layout, add new property, it's here. I'll add it. If I save that at this point, I would only have the price displayed, so that wouldn't be very interesting. I'm going to add the title of the product. And I'm going to check this here. That is going to create a link over that title so that when you click on it, you go to the actual detailed page for that product. Okay, so I'm displaying two things here. The title that I probably want to go up here. So the title with a link, and then I will have the price. All right, so let's refresh this. And there you go. I have my title with a link to the product details and my price. Now the thing is, that price, this is not exactly how I want to render it. And I might actually also want my title to be in, let's say, an H2 tag, for example. So I can go to this guy. I can open those additional tabs here, and I have lots of options that come with it. First one enables you to create a label that is going to be put before the contents that you're putting there. And you can, customize the HTML in lots of different ways. So for example, for my title here, if I want an H2, this is where I would do it. So here I'm customizing the HTML for that property, and I'm saying that the HTML element that I want is an H2. And when I refresh this, now this guy is an H2. And for the price, I can go further and, well, let's take a look at the other ones. So we've looked at this one. You can customize the tag for the label itself that you're adding through this one. You can specify a CSS class, etc., etc. And all those guys, you might notice here, those guys are token enabled. So you can actually, for example, if you wanted to create a CSS class that's, let's say, I don't know, price, and then you also want price dash, and then the SKU of the product, for example. Probably in the product, yeah, SKU here. I could do that. Oh, you know what? Let's do it. You can also customize a custom wrapper around the property and do lots of things. But and you can also specify what happens when there are no results. But the one that I'm going to change here is that I'm going to rewrite the output of this because I want a dollar in front of my property. And here I have a special token that is text that is just going to be the value of the property. So now I will have some additional classes on my price label, and I will have a dollar in front of the amount. There you go. And if we check the tag around this, where is my class? Sebastian, where is my class? Oh, I rewrote. Yeah. Yeah, because I rewrote it, I need to integrate that. That's a good point. Well, you know what? That wasn't in my script. I just added it to the demo, so I'm getting punished for that. So here is what you can do. Because this is token driven, and this is going to be your rendered output. This should work, right? So here I have a special class that is price dash and then the SKU of my product. So if I want to star that particular price in my CSS, I could. Okay, so next I'm going to add a new property, which is going to be the summary of my contents. So here I'm going to add the body part text property. And I'm going to use a few other changes that I can make to rewrite the results. I'm going to trim the results. I'll start with 100 characters. I only want to trim on a word boundary, and I want to add an ellipsis when the content is longer than that. I don't need to strip HTML tags because I'm using Markdown, and you will actually see a bug here, which is that the Markdown is not going to be interpreted. The bug has been filed and will be fixed at some point. And there are a few other options. For example, preserve new lines is useful when you display comments, for example, because the comments are entered as plain text, but the new lines are important. They need to be preserved when you display them. So now I should have, the first 100 characters or less trimmed on word boundary and with an ellipsis after them. So I'm starting to build a list of products that has a summary that is exactly what I want, without having to override any template and without having to touch placement at all. I'm going to change that text again, and I'm going to rewrite it. I will have to make this a little longer because the way I'm going to rewrite it is going to add some more HTML. Here I'm going to add a custom token that comes from my image gallery, because I want to display the first image for my product next to the summary. So my Zen gallery module is adding some new tokens here. So it's adding some new tokens of type Zen gallery, but to access those guys, I need to get them from the content item. So I can look under content item and see that on the bottom here, I have two tokens from content, content.zengallery and content.zengallery colon, and then an index. Tokens are a very, very important feature. If you're going to do any advanced work with projections or with rules or with a few other things like autoroute, you will need to understand what tokens are and how they work. So here I'm just going to use this token here, and I'm also going to use what I had before, which was content.text, or I could do just this. So let me save this. This is not going to do much, because that token is just giving us the list of URLs if you don't specify something after it. So what we see here is just URLs for the moment, separated by commas. This is not very useful. Okay, so tokens are actually chainable. So that content.zengallery token is itself of type Zengallery. So if I look this up down here, I can see what I can chain after that token. And I can chain first, last, or the third one I will show later. But here I'll use first, just to display the first image. So let's save that. And now I have only the first item being selected. So now what I have to do is add an image tag around this guy, and I should have an actual image. And here's my image, my huge, gigantic image. I badly need the media module, as you can see, so that I can get some nails in there. For the moment, I'm just going to do it the dirty way. I'm just going to add some inline stars in there, which is evil, of course. But you know what? I changed my mind. I actually want all of my images to be displayed, but I want them smaller. So instead of using that first subtoken, I'm going to use another one, which is the last one in the list here, the concat one. I'm going to show the implementation of that because it's quite interesting. So here I have one of my tokens is concat, and if you have been using the datetime tokens, for example, you may know that you can specify a format in these tokens, which is quite the magical feature. And here I have something similar where I can specify some kind of format string that I'm going to use on each of the values, so on each of the URLs, and it's going to concatenate that for me, and I can even specify a separator between them. So here I'm going to create an image tag for each of the URLs. So here is just the special syntax that I came up with. And you know what? I'm going to add the inline stars immediately so that it's not too difficult to read. So I'm going to float the images to the left, and I'm going to add a max width of 100 pixels and a max height of 100 pixels. Of course, you would do all that with CSS the proper way. I'm taking shortcuts here. And I don't want that anymore here. And this one, neither. Okay. So this is going to concatenate those strings, replacing that placeholder here with the actual URL. And there they are, my images. So let me show you the code for those tokens real fast. This is a pattern you'll see often in our chart. It's the same pattern that is being used in tokens. Well, in tokens, in forms, and in a few other places. First, you have a describe method that is going to give the description of the different tokens that I'm exposing so that they can be presented in the drop-down list and in a few other places. I'm adding to the existing content token, and I'm adding those two subtokens under content. So this is just description. This is pure metadata. There is no logic here. Then I have a new token. Well, this provider doesn't care whether it existed or not. Here, if it finds one that already exists, it will add to it. And here, this one is new. It will just create it on the fly. And I'm defining what goes under. The real magic is happening in the evaluate function. And in evaluate, we are actually declaring how those tokens are going to be evaluated. So for example, the first one that I used was just content.zengallery, and this was obtained by just doing a string join on the URLs of the images that I have on the content item. So I'm casting the content item as Zengallery part, getting the images from the service, and just doing a string join on that. So that's the easiest tokens, but then you can also declare how they are chained. So you declare how you chain them and what should happen when you try to chain them. So Zengallery, here in this case, is not going to do the string join. It's going to return the enumeration of URLs. That can then be used because I specified that this chainable token is of type Zengallery. Then this guy here is going to be able to piggyback on that and do its work. First, last, etc. And those guys, the first and last, themselves are of URL type, and the URL tokens have themselves tokens that you can use. So you can chain them at will. And the interesting one here is concat. As the first argument, you can specify the name of the token, or you can also specify an expression that is going to be evaluated at runtime. And if it doesn't return null, the token will enter into action. So this one is looking at anything that starts with concat. And when something starts with concat, it's going to transform it by taking what's after the concat, which is the format string. And then in this case, we're calling the concatenate method that is defined down here that is doing the actual work. So here you can see how tokens are a great way to extend projections kind of from the side. And once you've done that, once you've gone that far, using tokens and rewrites and all that stuff, you went pretty much to you've done the most complex things that you can do with just projections without extending it. So next, I'm going to extend it. And to extend it, I'm going to take an empty module here that I prepared. There is nothing in there. How much time do I have? Okay, so you know what? I'm going to copy the finished thing. Okay, so now I have the new module in place, and this module is introducing its own layout. So let me go back to queries, products, edit, and this time I'm going to add a new layout. Should be there. Oh yeah. Yeah, you know, every time I divert from my script, I mess up. Harvest projection, sample, enable. Thanks. Queries, products, add new layout, and here it is. Simple formatted list. And this guy will enable me to do simple concatenation of the results of my query using a format that I specify using tokens. So it's kind of a dynamic template thing using token. So let me show you how this works. So I'm going to add an arbitrary wrapper here. And the item format is going to be just so the double squigglies here are beside, because I actually need to escape the tokens because otherwise they get double evaluated. So I'm just going to use the display text here, and I'm going to use a comma as the separator. Well, no, I'm actually going to put a link on this. So I want to link to the content item. So content dot display URL is going to be the URL for this link, and I want the title. Oops. I want the title of to be the title of my product to be the text of the link. So this should generate items colon and a link for each of my products with the title on the link, separated by commas. And once I've created that layout for the query, I need to use it somewhere. So I'm just going to create a widget here that I'm going to add to a site second using projection widget. And this time I'm going to use the product query using my simple formatted list. I'm going to leave all the other defaults. Title can be empty. Yeah, recent. Actually, I'm going to limit this to 5 items. So this is going to display the 5 most recent, without pager, 5 most recent items in the sidebar. And there you go. There they are. And the code for that, I need to add the project to the solution here. Existing project.
You posted this module?
No, not yet, but it's 2 days old. So did I pass it? Yeah. Harvest projection sample. And it's fairly simple. What we have here is the description of the layout. So again, you recognize that pattern where we describe, we give the metadata for that layout. We explain what it is, and we point to how to execute it. So I didn't do this in line. I created methods here to do it. Display layout is the method that's going to be evaluated when we need to display what the layout is doing. So, you know, when you go to queries and you look at those guys here, they are static, but they could actually be dynamically formatted using some properties of what you are doing. So, you know, for example, if we had a property that defines what tag we put around. It could say simple formatted list using tag foo, for example. But this one is just returning a localized string. What's interesting is happening in render layout. So this is getting a context object and the layout component results, which is what we are going to work with. In the context, I can have properties that will come from the form that I will expose, and I will show the form in a second. They come as dynamic properties that are on the state object. So whatever the form is providing, I can use inside of my layout to customize the rendering. Here I have my list of items that, so this is a technicality. You know how here in the layout editor you have choice between content and properties. This is the display mode. This is this property here, so you need to check. Depending on the display mode, you want either the content item, but here I put it inside of a token-friendly structure, or you can get the list of properties that have been defined from the UI. And then I'm creating a simple list shape on the fly that has the list of items, the wrapper format. So those are the properties that I define. So the rendering is not yet happening here. Here we are just preparing a shape. You're used to that. You've seen, you were awake during Sebastian's demo. Second thing here, the form. Well, let me show you the shape first. It's probably better to do the shape, and then I'll look at the form. So the shape here, I could have done a template, a CSHTML template, but I did a shape method because it's just doing string concatenation. So code is actually doing that probably a little easier. I'm getting the arguments here as bound parameters. So these will just get filled as needed. I'm handling some default values here. Nothing very interesting. The interesting thing is happening here. I'm doing output.write, so I have my text writer here. So this is where the rendering is actually happening. And here you can see that I'm using the tokenizer to replace the tokens that I have in the format string with the proper evaluated values. So this is doing the actual encoding. The last thing that we need to look at is the form, which you've seen. It was this form here, this part of the form. This is the customizable part of the editor. So you don't specify a template or anything like that. What you do specify is a description of the form. How many of you are familiar with orchard.forms? Okay, so orchard.forms, as I said, is an API that enables you to create forms from code. And it's very handy because it enables you to create collaborative ways of creating forms. And here it's very useful because, part of the form here is handled by the framework, by Orchard, and part of it is my customization. And all I have to do is describe this form, and it's going to take care of the persisting of the values that are being entered in there and getting those values back. And that's it. This is how you create a custom layout. And I think that was an interesting thing to do for this demo because, we've been kind of hand-waving this when people ask questions on projections that are a little too complicated for the basic capabilities of the module. We just tell people, well, you can create your own layout. But there wasn't any simple sample out there that was showing exactly how to do it. So hopefully this is it, and it can help you create your own complex layouts. Extending filters and sorting is similar, but it's actually a little simpler. So this is probably the most complex stuff you can do with projection.
Great, Bertrand. Thank you very much. We're going to do some Q&A.
That was great. Thanks. I was just wondering about the editing property system. Is that extendable? For example, if you add a new property to your, I think, layout, you could provide things like rewriting the output of your property. can you add categories to that? Is that an extendable system?
Oh, you mean to the basic layout?
Yes.
No, that's kind of the point. You know, those guys are what you get out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
They are made to enable you to go pretty far. So you have a hierarchical tree of stuff you can do to modify that output.
Right.
Right, and it's very flexible, but as I said, it has to stop somewhere.
Right.
So I guess it could maybe be made extensible. I don't know how exactly, but it isn't right now, right? Hmm? Yeah. Well, yeah. You can always modify the. Yeah. You can always modify the code, but yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and if you want more complex stuff, you create your own like that.
I was just thinking about the yes SQL stuff and filtering projections, and that sounds interesting. Have you thought about that yet?
I'm not sure what the question is because, well, one of the things about projections is that it enabled you to query over stuff that you couldn't query on earlier. If you wanted to filter something on a field, for example, you couldn't really do that easily with previous versions of our chart.
Yeah, it just seems like I think there would be this index that you would have to have in order to really query by a field. And I'm just guessing that like some filter providers.
Oh, yeah, okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. Well, it's very interesting because when Sebastian developed projections, he actually created those indices, those index tables.
Ah, okay.
In order to be able to query over them.
Gotcha.
And if I'm not mistaken, that was kind of the same time when you started doing SQL, right? So, you know, it cross-pollinates those things. They are very, very related.
Anybody else have any other questions?
In the projection for where you call out like the summary of it, I think somebody had a question the day before about because they had two different summaries that they wanted to show.
Okay.
And that was one way I got around it by using alternates on the, but you didn't really talk about it here. And that's just by changing that name. Then you can use that name in an alternate.
What name?
For in the I can't remember what it's called. Display type. Yes, thanks.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I guess it's yes.
Yes?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's not much of a question, but I can't remember who asked yesterday about.
Yeah.
To answer the question. So yes, the summary is not an alternate, it's a display type, which means there will be an alternate using the display type. So when say content dash foo_barbase is your display type. So you can override with the template. Yeah. Get it?
Yes.
In the projection, but if you can't really write an alternate for a
Yeah.
projection, can you? Because it's going to be the same for all projections.
Yeah. So display type is only relevant when you're in content mode. I haven't shown content mode. So when you're in content mode and not in property mode you just take your properties and display them any way you want. If you are in content mode, then you're going to go through a template, a regular template. So it's a regular way of rendering contents. And in that case, you can specify what display type to use. And if you want to do short summary, for example, you can. And you're going to be able to use an alternate that is content-short summary.cshtml.
All right, perfect. Great way to end it. Thank you very much.